The Campaign 2020, now a new poll just released today, shows less than ideal conditions for President Trump here in Florida.
It also sheds light on what Floridians are prioritizing and how they feel about Governor Ron DeSantis. CBS4's Jim DeFede is here with more.
Elliot Rudabay, that new poll by Ben Dixon and Amandi International showed President Trump upside down on his approval rating. He is viewed unfavorably by 52% of registered voters and has a favorable rating with just 43%. Let's dig into these numbers a little more with the person who conducted that survey, Democratic pollster Fernand Amandi. Fernand, thank you for coming in.
Jim, always a pleasure.
All right, so the favorable, unfavorable. Let's talk about that a little bit. Anything surprising there to you?
Well, I think, we always look at where your favorability rating stands. Anything under 50% is a warning sign. And right now, President Trump at 43%, I think it is cause for concern, especially given how many people know him. Everybody in the poll recognizes him. So these opinions tend to be somewhat baked in.
So we were talking before about you got to be careful with the popularity numbers, the favorable, unfavorable. That may not be the best indicator as to whether or not somebody is going to be voted for. You can find them unfavorable, but still end up voting for.
Well, it's what happened to the president in 2016. He did not go into Election Day with positive favorable ratings. It was quite the contrary. First time in American history, I think that's happened before. And I think that's why now pollsters and public opinion researchers need to ask the fundamental question, would you vote to re-elect President Trump to another 4 years?
So let's go to that question.
Let's go there.
Yeah. Let's go there. Do you believe Donald Trump should be re-elected? 40% say yes, 53% say no. That's a bad number for the president.
Indeed, it is a bad number. And again, I go back to why. He is known by pretty much everyone. Anytime you're, in this case, over 50%, that's a warning sign or a trouble sign. 53%, more than a majority, saying they wouldn't re-elect you, I think is reason for trouble in Florida paradise for the president, which he considers Florida his kind of second home state, if you would.
I want to drill deeper into those numbers a little bit more. One of the things I found fascinating going through the poll, not surprising, 77% of Democrats say they would not vote to re-elect the president. 23% of Republicans said they would not vote to re-elect the president. That number seems a little high, but it's there.
A little high, yeah.
63% of independents. That's the number that really has to trouble him, isn't it? 63% of independents say they would not vote to re-elect the president.
You make a good political analyst, Jim, because you put it on the ball right there. It is that is the ball game, those independent voters. And I think that's who actually Governor DeSantis has done a really good job appealing to those folks. President Trump has not, and that's why I think their ratings are a mirror image of each other.
We're seeing the president make a real strong play, not just for Cuban Americans, but for also with the Venezuelan community. I know you also went a little deeper into looking at the Cuban, non-Cuban Hispanic numbers.
Right.
What can you tell me about that? I think that the Cuban numbers, he has a high rating that will likely vote to re-elect him, but not so much with non-Cuban Hispanics in Florida.
Yeah, he enjoys very high numbers. Cubans are very much the base of the Trump coalition of support, with 62% saying they would vote to re-elect. On the other hand, non-Cuban Hispanic voters in Florida, dominated mostly by, of course, Puerto Ricans and Central and South Americans, 71% of those, Jim, said they would not vote to re-elect President Trump.
It'll be interesting to see if what he's doing with Venezuela taps into that growing community. That community has always consistently voted Democratic. Trump is trying to peel some of that away. Maybe too soon to know whether or not he's successful, but your numbers suggest right now he's not.
Right now he's not, and of course circumstances could change, but there's also not really that many Venezuelan voters in the Florida electorate. A lot of Venezuelans living here, not that many of them yet have entered the electorate, so I think there might be a little bit of a permeator there.
All right, so let's go to who he could potentially face in 2020. The Democratic primary were held today. Let's put up that graphic. Who would you vote for? Joe Biden is at 26%, Bernie Sanders 11%, Kamala Harris 9%, Elizabeth Warren 4%, and then the long list of everyone else, Beto O'Rourke, Amy Klobuchar, all around 1%. 46% though undecided. Now this was just among Democratic voters, so you oversampled Democratic voters, and in this one the plus or minus is actually closer to like 6%.
That's right.
But talk to me a little bit about this. What do you draw from this?
Well, first and foremost, the race for Florida's presidential primary amongst Democrats is wide open. And how do we know? We also asked the question open-ended, where we didn't give people choices, and you had to almost force people to respond, and at that point 76% went to undecided. But having said that, Jim, I think it would be a mistake not to recognize that there is a clear front runner right now, and that person's name is former Vice President Joe Biden. When you look at his support, it cuts across the full spectrum of Democratic voters, by age, by ethnicity, by ideology, and by region, all four corners of the state. Whether or not that's just a function of name identification, and you might even say the Obama effect, having been Obama's vice president for 8 years, remains to be seen. But he does start off in a good position.
But I'll tell you, if I was a year and a half out from, or a year from a primary, Kamala Harris at 9%, the fact that she's even registering, basically tied with Bernie Sanders, that's got to be good for Kamala Harris.
Oh, absolutely. That is definitely what I think one of the big surprises coming out of that. I probably wouldn't have been a surprise if that poll had been taken in another state, maybe closer to the West Coast, but in Florida, where Kamala Harris really not much of a known quantity, recent senator to poll at 9%, statistically tied for second, that's impressive.
I want to run through two things real quick.
Sure.
I just want to show the graphic on issues, the issues that are the biggest problems. 17% believe climate change or the environment. Jobs economy at 12%. Donald Trump is the biggest problem facing Florida. It comes in at 6%. Gun violence at 5%. An interesting lineup here. We talked a little bit before. You don't normally see climate change and the environment so high on a poll like this.
I've never seen it in first place. Now, granted, it's not overwhelmingly in first place, but the fact is, I think a lot of Floridians are recognizing, because of red tide, blue algae, and of course the threat, the existential threat of climate change is becoming a bigger issue.
And that may explain the last thing that we'll put up very, very quickly. The favorable, unfavorable for Ron DeSantis. The governor enjoys a 50% favorable rating to only 23% unfavorable. This is one heck of a start by the governor.
A heck of a start, and very much still in the honeymoon phase. These are very good numbers for a Republican governor who won a very contested, polarized election result against Andrew Gillum.
Fernand, thank you very much. Elliot, Rudabeh, back to you.